All right. I don't see. Oh, there's my live button. We are live. We are live. I will give it a few minutes for folks to join and then we'll get started. We've already had a 20-minute show already in, in just our pre-talk. So thank you all for being here with me. I will give it a few minutes for folks to join and we'll get started. All right, I see a thumbs up. That means we got somebody out there.
Good morning. Thank you for having us, Jill.
Absolutely. Glad you all were interested in sharing your story. Good afternoon, Michelle. Thank you for being here. All right, I got some more thumbs up. Folks are joining. All right, everybody ran into the room at the same time. Good afternoon, Arnell. Thank you for being here. Happy Sunday, Rosalind. Necelia, I think is how you would pronounce your name. If I messed that up, I apologize. Greetings. Thank you for being here. Hi, Sandra. Hello, KC. All right. We got a full house. The door opened and everybody walked on in at the same time. Thank you all very much for being here. I am going to do my kickoff. Um, I didn't prep my screen, so let's make sure no, that's not the right screen. Well, let's get to the right screen, Jewel. And that's still not right. Y'all know how I do. One day I'll get it exactly right, but that's not going to be today. All right, here we go. Here we go. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are located, depending on your location. It is afternoon for me. It is morning for my guests. So I thank them very much for being here. My name is Jewel Pearson. This is Miss Bohemian Soul TV. This segment is the Creating Home, a Tiny House series. The segment we are about to get started on is one of the conversations on intimate spaces. And every Sunday, I offer live content. I alternate between these conversations and the What's Your Questions part of the segment where I answer frequently asked tiny house questions. As I introduce myself, I like to say I built a kind of fancy tiny house in 2015. And since that time, I have shared my journey to hopefully inspire others who are interested in the movement. And I do offer coaching and consultations to help others in their tiny house journey. You will be able to find links to schedule with me in the video description once this goes live. And as I'm doing all of that, I serve up a lot of representation in the movement along the way. It is my intent to build figurative and literal community that is inclusive and accessible. And I hope that you'll find this information and the video helpful and that you'll like it, you'll share it, you'll subscribe to the channel, and then turn on the notifications so that you'll know when content is available. All right, so that is my wish. I'm gonna get it right today, promise. There we go. Y'all are back. Noah and Kisha, thank you so much for being here this morning. Please go ahead and introduce yourselves.
I'm Kisha, and this is.
And my name is Noah Mellor, and my beautiful wife Kisha.
Very nice to have you all here. Any background you want to? Now, I did share the bio on Instagram, but any of your background that you want to share, but we're going to obviously talk about the work you're doing, but any kind of background you want to share about yourselves as part of your introduction, what you do.
Yes, we're born and raised in the Bay, Oakland specific, and Noah is a commercial plumber by trade, and I am a stay-at-home mom, and at this point, kind of walking into the space of ADU advocacy and just education and letting people know what the possibilities are. Noah is a builder in our kind of like one-man crew, and he does everything from framing, plumbing, electrical, finding the right people to get help. That's what he does. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, we're from Oakland, California. I got into trades right out of high school. And I guess, I've been married for 21 years. We got 3 grown kids. and
Did
they're
you
all
say
doing pretty well.
24 years? Did you say 24 years?
21. I'm sorry, Julie. No, 21.
21.
21. Congratulations. That's
Yeah,
beautiful.
it is beautiful.
That is
Thank you so
beautiful.
much. And now our kids are grown, and we're just living our life that we couldn't live the way we. Well, good life, right? Not a bad life, but we have kids at such a young age. Now we are
Right.
kind of roaming, living a freer life.
Reinventing the life, that another version that brings us fulfillment and, intentional like happiness and purpose.
Before the
I
grandkids come.
well, my daughter says she doesn't want to have kids, so I don't know that I'll experience that, but I can certainly relate to reimagining life after raising your children. It's like almost a new lease on life that you got to figure out, especially when you had kids young. You got to figure out, one, who you are
Mm-hmm.
with grown kids, because you don't even really know who you are anymore, and just figuring out, how to navigate that going forward. So I can definitely relate to that. I did not know who I was outside of pick up, drop off, homework, fix dinner. Like, it was a whole learning curve for me when my daughter went off to undergrad. So I can relate. So as I kick off this segment, I always say that I believe that our homes tell a story about us, and whether it is intentional or unintentional, they do tell a story about us. I also believe that for people involved in and around the tiny house movement, van life, I feel like there's a lot of intent in the decisions to live tiny, to downsize, to pursue that journey. So I feel like there's a lot of intent in our decisions to get there, and in our design, in our journey. And so that's what we usually explore in these conversations, because I feel like it is so much bigger than the house and the actual build of the house. Like, there's a lot behind the scenes in the journey and in the people. And so instead of focusing on um the design and what pillows you used, and where you got your couch from, we want to talk about, like, the intimate conversation and getting to know the people. So thank you all both. Thank you both for being here. We got a full house. Thank you all, everyone. I tried to say good morning to everyone. Thank you all for being here. So let's talk about your journey. So, as I've read your bio and some of my brief conversations with Kisha, you were planning as empty nesters. Your kids are grown, and now you're figuring out what you're doing and the direction that you're going in. And then you had something major, and we'll talk about it at the level that you're okay with talking about it, major, that changed that trajectory. What were your original plans as you first started out? What direction were you headed in?
Well, I think initially we thought, okay, our kids are gone. It was very hard on me. I had, honestly, a couple years of severe just depression and sadness because I just did not know what to do with myself. Our kids were everything to me, are everything to me. And so we were kind of planning to take more vacations, but really live our life just as we had been living it. And then first we kind of knew something was going on with our daughter. And then her first year in college, we got a solid definitive diagnosis that she has, a chronic, serious autoimmune. And that threw us for a loop. The next year, we get another diagnosis that our son has a serious mental illness. So now we're in this position where we thought we might be retiring, at some point, and having these kids who have these lives that are very independent of us. And we realize that that might not be the case, that we might not have people who are always able to take care of themselves, and that now we don't need to just plan for our retirement, but now we need to plan for a life in which we might have to take care of two other people, at least two other people, or somehow support them in some way. And that really changed our direct trajectory. That's when we were like, okay, wait, Noah and I will probably end up working,
Mm-hmm.
forever, because we won't be able to afford to help them, and we won't, we love them. We're not going to make the decision just to stop if we can't help them. So we're going to keep working. And that's when we kind of came up with a plan, like, what can we do? What do we have that we could leverage to, build our nest egg and still work toward retirement and travel? We had them so long, we hadn't done a lot of traveling, and we really,
Right.
On top of this heartache, we didn't want to kind of see all our dreams kind of evaporate too.
Right. Right.
And then on top of that, I think, so I'm a plumber by trade, but I'm a plumber by trade, but I'm what you would call a detailer, so I design systems on the computer. So once COVID hit, I was able to go work from home, and Kisha saw how what would the word be?
Just stressed out.
Just stressed, yeah.
I saw something. I knew that he was under a lot of pressure, but I didn't understand the magnitude of it until he worked from home during COVID. And I was like,
I'm going to die.
I was like, my husband's going to have a heart attack. There's no way he can keep this up for another, 20 years or more, even if he's good at it. He's really good at it, but it's just so stressful. So also COVID, thank you for bringing that up. That was a big catalyst because I could see it with my own eyes and feel his energy every morning. And I was like, we have to do something to get out of this.
So we planned at that point too. That's when we got into the more with the van, but that was the first step. I think we're like, okay, we're going to step out and start a different path.
So 2 things that you all brought up that I think are important to talk about. So first, Kisha, when you were saying dealing with depression those first couple of years after the kids left because they were your world, I can relate to that, not at that magnitude, but the very first time I moved back to Charlotte. So my daughter grew up, I raised my daughter in Atlanta, and she went to undergrad in Durham, North Carolina. So that was about 6 hours from me. And I remember dropping her off the very first time dropping her off, and I cried all the way back home. My sister was with me, and I was initially in that ride, I was trying to think of a reason to call her, like just to, not to be hover mom, but let me think of something to call her. And so the very, very first time I called on the way back home, she didn't answer the phone. And so then I told my sister, she's got I forgot what I said. She's got an hour to call me back in this ride before. So I just remember the panic in dropping my daughter off because it had just been us for, 18 years. And then I got home, and that very first week I was physically ill, like stomach upset, just physically ill an entire week. And that is how I ended up relocating to Charlotte, because the distance, the 6 hours away, worrying if something happened, it was going to take me 6 hours to get to her if I had to drive, because I might not have flight money. All of that just played into my well-being, so I can relate. And so I found a job and I relocated to Charlotte very soon after. Like, I didn't want to be right on top of her, but I wanted to. So I was an hour 45 minutes away, and I had cut that down sometimes just so I could be closer. Like, I could make that happen quicker, just so I could be closer, because I was so out of sorts. She was fine. I don't even know that she called me back that night after I said, she's got an hour to call me back. She may not have called me back. She was fine. But I can relate to 18 years of being their protectors and life centering around them. So I don't think people talk about that enough, because then obviously I figured it out and went in my own direction and started doing the things, and that had always been my plan, but I just hadn't considered what that was going to feel like at that particular point.
Right. It caught you off guard. I think because we don't have the conversation enough to because it caught me off guard that I was, I mean, in a way, they're teenagers. So they're on some level, they can irritate you, even though, my daughter and I are really close. But there is this level where it's like, okay, God's making it easy for me to hand you off to the world. But on the other side, I just missed her every day, and no one talked about this like wait where I would wake up and just be like, where it, and I'm happy for her. Like I wanted
Yes,
her to go out into
yes,
the world.
yes.
Right. And that's what I wanted for her. That's what we were all working toward, but it was still just a lot. And then the boys, and I was just like, this is too much. And there's no way to pause it really.
Right,
So,
right. You're absolutely right, because you want them to go off, you want them to be okay, but you still, like, I was sitting there thinking, because we grew up in the suburbs, and I was like, does she even know how to cross this street with light signals? It's like all the things that I'm thinking of. Did I teach her that? Did I do this, enough of this? And so it's just like, no, I really would like you to come back home so I can just keep my eye on you, because the concerns out in the world, so I can relate to that. And I think it's important, because oftentimes society shows it as just pushing them out of the house and going off and doing fabulous things, and then you don't get to talk about the emotion of what that change looks like for for parenting. So thank you for sharing that. The other piece that I wanted to mention, wanted to kind of explore, was COVID, the lockdown. And for me, during that time period, there was such, I work in corporate America, and there was such a, do you call it a juxtaposition, with some of the people who were excited about working from home, they were flourishing. It wasn't really a change for them other than being at home. And then the people who were really struggling because the way their job was set up, it wasn't really conducive for them to be at home 100%, or their job completely ended because they couldn't work anymore because it wasn't a stay at home job. And there was so much of like mental illness and challenges that people were experiencing, and there was such a difference in the world where some people had no clue of what those other people were dealing with. And that for me was really sad, because it was really divided on basically the haves and the have nots.
hmm hmm yeah. And we felt that the hard part was, even though I saw him stressed, I felt grateful that he still had a job, because so many people didn't have jobs. So I think both of us was like, oh, I know this is really hard to do and it's stressing you out. But then there's this component that, well, at least you have a job right now, when other people, aren't in the same situation. So no, we had that conversation too. We felt that, like, oh, wow, all these people, we're just lucky to have a job, even if it's it's super stressful. And
Yeah,
yeah, that was a
yeah,
piece of it too.
yeah. So Noah, you mentioned that you all have been interested in van life, and that was kind of the direction that you were going in. Um, how did you decide on how did you all become interested in van life? Like, what were your why outside of travel? What was the thing that drew you to potentially van life?
That was Kisha probably. The good part, she's very, I'm working every day, but she has the young mind to very young minded. I don't know if I'm explaining it correctly, but just adventurous, let's say. So my company I worked with, um, they would sell fleet vehicles, and um, so some fleet vehicles on sale. They were always amazing prices, and a list of fleet vehicles came out for sale, and it was like these options of cars or SUVs, and I was like, oh, I want this SUV or a nice little cheap vehicle. And she saw the vans, and it was just automatic. She's like, no, you got to get a van. That's a place for us to live. We can travel and do all that. And I was like a good husband, I said, yeah, let's do that. I want a
He said,
van.
like a
Yeah,
like a good husband, like a good neighbor.
you're right. I want the van. um, so we got the van. Unbelievable deal. I paid $2,500 for a 2012 Ford E350.
Wow.
Had a good amount of miles on it, but this company always they took care of the vehicles, and we bought the van, and we bought that in March of, I can't recall the year, but we bought it in March. I just remember we bought it in March, and January 1st is when I started working. Um, so I had all that time do my job and also convert the van, and slowly converted the van. So that was how I started.
And to add to that, a big piece of it was affordability. So I'm trying to figure out how we can not sabotage our kids, future or our savings or drain it, but still take a break because we're just, emotionally, and we both needed the break at this point now. Um, and so I had been binge watching YouTube videos on van life, which is what we usually do before we make any moves. Is we just binge watch YouTube on any, on that topic. If it's travel, if it's, building something, we're just going to binge watch. And that's what I did. And when he went to that sale, he actually was going to buy a car, and someone bought the car moments before he got there, and he was kind of bummed.
Okay.
And I was like, "Don't worry about it. Get that van. Like, is the van still there? Just get me the van we need." And from there, that was like, and it was affordable, $2,000. There was very little investment. Worst case,
Yeah, yeah,
And we
yeah.
resell it, right?
You can take a L
we
on
still
that.
got
It wasn't a major. I'm sorry. Go ahead,
right,
Noah.
Right.
right.
Uh-oh, did I? Okay, you're back. So let's talk about the DIY aspect of your build. So I think I saw a couple of posts related to the van build out, where and the ADUs that we're going to talk about in a bit, where you said that some of the work wasn't necessarily your skill set, and kind of how you divide the work that you do. A lot of the stuff that we talk about here is related to something you want to do, a dream you want to follow, and sometimes people are scared to attempt it because they don't have that experience, or they get stuck because they don't want to try something new. And Kisha, you were just speaking a minute ago about binging on YouTube videos. What is your thought process? What's your motivation? Because I'm always trying to encourage people to think outside of the box and do things scared, and do things that they don't know about. Talk a bit about your thought process and motivation to try things like this, even when it's not really your skill set.
I think I'm gonna hand this off to Noah because I'm really big. I'm a promoter. I'm gonna come up with all the awesome ideas, but he's kind of gonna just like take the leap. And so I think it's a good question for you to answer.
Um, I'm always I don't know. You get afraid. I mean, it's basically I just keep moving forward. I'm sure like a lot of us, I keep moving forward. If there's a challenge, um, I just got to take baby steps forward every time and just keep moving forward with it. And in my mind, there's a guy I've seen, just some random dude I saw on all this binge watching, who was building ADUs, and he spoke to me without speaking to me. He just looked at me in the video, just to me, and he said, "Just don't, you young people out there, just don't quit. Don't start it. Do not quit." So that stays in my head all the time. Um, it's very easy to quit, or at least just to stop the momentum moving forward
Mm-hmm.
for a couple months.
Mm-hmm.
That's in my head. It's like, just don't stop moving forward. That's the motivation. I'm building the ADU now, and even with that step in that process, just recently we had this Friday we had a rough-in inspection pass, and I kept telling Kisha we have to make this rough-in inspection this past Friday. I want to make it this Friday, and it was 105 out here in Sacramento. We're in
You could
Sacramento.
say it. I thought he was crazy. You could say it. I was like, we're not gonna make this. We can't be out here working in 105, but you know we're doing it.
Yeah, we have to. Let's do it. Let's set the goal. If we don't hit the goal, at least I'll have a list of what I need to fix to pass the rough inspection. And hey, luckily we didn't fail, and we passed the rough inspection. So it was great with the van conversion. Yeah, thank you. With the van conversion, I just binge watched tons of videos, and lots of videos. I kept watching all for my model of vehicle, and I just kept watching. And it really is, as some of us might know, it's all there on YouTube. I'd never done solar before, and I just kept watching the videos and taking the steps and just did it. So my motivation, that's it. I have a goal, and I just keep hitting it. I don't care if it's just it worked. I don't know. You just have to have a positive step move forward every time.
Yeah.
Just keep taking action.
And that's exactly what I was getting ready to say, to go back to Noah's point of don't stop, because um and don't stall, because sometimes you stall and before you know it the stall has turned into a long stop and you lose your motivation, you lose your moxie, you lose all of that. So going, and the other thing that I think is important as you're doing is like celebrating the small steps, the small wins, just like you said, getting to rough in and getting that inspection happening and getting and passing that inspection. That's a big win. Celebrating that win and realizing, okay, we've gotten to this baby step. Let's keep it going. So I those are the exact same things that I talk about here, to encourage people to do the thing that they don't really know how to do, or and see other people do. And I also feel like that's why it's important to have these conversations, to show to people that people are doing stuff scared, people are doing stuff unknown, and they're being successful. And so I think that is really important. So thank you for sharing that. So we're going to look at your pictures in just a few minutes, but I'm kind of trying to build up to explaining the background of the story. So now with the band, are you on the road as you learn about the challenges with your two adult children? Have you gotten, has the build happened when you learn about this? What's the time frame?
Yeah, no, that happened first. We got the diagnosis as before, and then
Okay.
COVID occurred.
Okay.
And that's when I saw Noah stressed out, and all of it together was just like, okay, it was almost like the universe was pushing us in this direction, because we really were just going to live in our house, for another 20 years and take vacations and, work our regular, our 9 to 5, we're kind of going to do that traditional routine. And almost like we were led there, like, no, you're going to go this way. And, if just, I feel like for our sanity, like we had to do it for our sanity. Just, it was too many things kind of weighing us down.
Before COVID, though, we did have we had converted a single car garage to a studio. Well, we were in our main house where we raised our family at, and we converted a single car garage. In the very beginning, it was a small house, so we had two boys. I had to convert the single car garage to the boys' bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. After they got older, we then converted that single car garage to a ADU, a fully contained ADU. And then we built a tiny house in the backyard. And then COVID hit, and then what Kisha just said.
Yeah, so all of that happened before COVID, but a lot of it was with the intention of just our family would be there. We were all there, like our sons would be in the other space and my sister was next door. So at first it was a different, it was just to make sure everyone had a place to live, kind of, not to leverage it in any way to build, to save anything.
Okay. That and kind of continuing the conversation. So as I talk about dreams and following dreams, it's not always a straight line. Like the kids are, we're empty nesters now. We're going to go off and do this thing. Or for me, I'm going to build this tiny house, and I imagine it, and then I go off and build a tiny house. Dreams aren't always like straight lines from the planning to the realization of the dream or the dream following. Sometimes you're going to have some challenges and obstacles that require you to pivot. And I also talk about how there's even, you might have this dream, you've decided that this is what we're going to do. And then you have to reset and dream a new dream because something happens and you recognize that's not going to work for you. And it's okay to reset and dream a new dream when it's necessary. You kind of have this plan, and it sounds like for you the reset happened and it was a better dream. But what is the pivot like as you're thinking through, okay, we've got these diagnoses, we need to do something different? What is your thought process along the lines of pivoting? We have to think of another direction to go for our family.
Yeah, so right now it feels like, okay, we're in a good space. But at the time we had those diagnoses and COVID, we didn't know what we were going to do. We had no idea how we were going to be able to retire. I think a part of us in our heart was just like resigned to this very, torturous existence where we're trying to figure out how to, take care of ourselves and care for our children too. I think the catalyst was once we figured out that we could rent out our spaces. That's when we kind of we had been listening to different podcasts on how I literally Googled how to make money with your home or how to make money from home. And I just kept looking at all those lists repeatedly and going through the list and saying, okay, no, I don't have product I need to sell. I just kept going through the list. And the one thing that I always had was that I could rent spaces. And once I figured out that, then now we had intention and we had a direction, and we were like, okay, we're going to figure out how to learn everything we can, and we're going to figure out how to rent these spaces.
She was looking at renting out the garage for storage space. If anybody needs to store some stuff, rent the garage out that way. All kinds of little stuff. And rent out. We had chickens. You're trying to make money off your land that way. But yeah.
So I was experimenting, on small scales with just about anything that might be profitable and help us build our nest egg and, supplement in case of an emergency one of our adult kids. Yeah. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you did perfectly. Thinking outside of the box, resetting, being in a place I think I heard you say almost in a place of despair, not knowing what you're going to do, but knowing you got to figure something out. Because again, and what I try to share with the audience and the guests here is that it's easy to look at the back end of somebody's story. It's easy for people to look at my tiny house and say, I can't do that. She was lucky, or to think I got from A to Z and it was easy, and it wasn't. And that's why there was some despair. I always talk about the, running out of money in my building. I was like, I'm done. I don't have any more money. Or completing the build, like the house is livable, but I still was out of money, and not having money to get a mini split unit, the AC unit. And I finished my build in May. So I sat in my house from May to July with no AC. And when I tell you, I sat very still, and I think I saw visions, and I think I was hallucinating. It was so hot. But I kept saying to myself, it will get better. It will be better. It's going to be okay. Like, I saw the vision of my tiny house. And so when I think about that now, 8 years in, it is the bonus and the blessing of seeing something through, but it wasn't easy. And that is exactly what I want people to understand, that it's not, dream following isn't easy, or figuring out how to navigate dreams and changes and challenges. It isn't easy, but it requires some research. It requires some stick-to-itiveness. It requires all of the things. And so you answered the question beautifully. Thank you very much for that. Okay, I'm going to share the pictures of, we're going to start with your build, the van, and then get to talking about the ADUs. So Noah, where are you all right here? Can you see the pictures? I was asking where.
Yeah,
can you see your picture? Okay. This looks like it's a beautiful view. Where were you all here?
This is off of Highway. Yeah, this is. You can hear me, okay, right, Jewel?
Yes.
This is off Highway 395. Another little chase that we like to do is chase hot springs, natural hot springs. And this is off Highway 35, I think near a town called Bishop. And this was at a hot spring that we went to last year. That's where and that is our van we call Just Patience,
or JP.
JP. So we can't stand up on it in it, but it's got everything we need. We got solar on it. We got the plan when we put solar was, yep, there we go. Sorry, they're not the best pictures, but yeah, that
Oh,
explains it.
that's
So that
okay.
black pipe, okay, that black pipe on top of it, I wrap the pipe around the top of it so it stores 20 gallons of water. It'll turn hot from the sun, So, and there
Oh,
Keisha sit
very
on the
smart.
inside. Yeah, so Keisha on the inside, there's a little sink right there. We put a little sink in there, and behind Keisha we got a refrigerator. And the goal was we had to put enough solar for her to be able to use her Vitamix machine. So we're able to run a Vitamix machine. Yeah, that's what it looked like when I got it. It was a work van, exactly. So,
Okay.
but we
Okay.
run a Vitamix machine. We got an air fryer in. We got a bed, a refrigerator, a sink. Yep, that's me when I was putting the bed in there. So yeah, we travel everywhere. Once I left work, we drove all the way down to the bottom of Baja. So we were in Oakland, and we drove all down to Cabo San Lucas area. We took about 3 to 4 weeks to do that.
We did that twice.
And I'm a plumber, so you see, I build a lot of stuff out of pipe. So we did some
I
shelving there. That's
love
all.
I love plumbing pipes. I have it throughout my house. I think it
Right.
adds to the design and the eclecticness of it. So makes sense to me.
Right. And it's easy to
I
work with. So, but yeah,
Yeah, it's
that's where we
funny.
put our clothes at.
Very nice. You know
Go
what
ahead.
you're
Sorry.
doing. I no no no. I stand around and look at all the bins and just grab stuff and try to put it together. At least you know what you're doing as a professional. I just go with what fits together and I like.
Right.
That works.
So
Very
yeah,
nice.
so is our van.
Go
Go
ahead. I'm
ahead.
sorry.
Sorry.
No. Go
No,
ahead.
you go. Okay.
I was
Yes,
gonna
we got a
circle.
little.
Go ahead, Noah. Yeah, I knew that was gonna happen. Please go ahead. I'm gonna be quiet. Go ahead.
Yeah, we put 2 fans in there, ceiling fans, which is very helpful. If anybody out there is going to do a van build, it's good to put 2 ceiling fans in. Called what are they called?
Are they vents?
I forgot what they're
No.
called, uh, but so I put 2 fans in there. It's good for, I guess, the cross breeze, you would say, instead of just putting
Mhm.
one. We got some can lights in there, and so. But yeah, you go ahead now, Jewel. That's all I
Oh,
was
and
gonna say.
they're RV fans, so it's a fan that you would normally see in an RV,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay. Almost like it sounds almost like the concept of like an attic fan, like it's pulling the hot air out with the two. One is like recirculating. Is that kind of what you're saying, Noah?
Exactly. Yes. Thank you.
That's how
Okay.
they could be used. You could pull it in
Okay.
or out, but it works like that, especially like when we're in Mexico and we don't have we don't have AC in the back like the car if it's running has AC, but we don't have any air conditioning. So that was kind of
Got it.
help us stay cool
Got it.
while we're
Okay.
traveling through Mexico.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I want to go back to, I want to talk again I want you to talk a little bit about your water here. I've not seen this and it's very smart. Putting the piping on the top so that the heat is going to naturally warm up the water versus, so do you also have like an on-demand water heater to heat up the water, or is this the source for your hot water?
Yeah, we do not have an on-demand water heater, but this is it right here. We have, so that again, so that's wrapping around the whole perimeter of the van. It's 4-inch PVC pipe, no,
Okay.
spray painted black, and that supplies our sink. And there's a connection on the back on the outside for a little like shower if you want to rinse off. And then so yeah, that's the hot water or cold water, and that'll go to the sink. And then I also put a 7-gallon tank underneath the van. I went online. There's there's people who make tanks online, and they have all kinds of options. And I found a location under the van to put a tank for drinking water if we needed to drink it drink water. And I we don't have a picture there, but at the sink I have two faucets. One that's being supplied from the pipe on the top, and another faucet that's being supplied from down below. And a cool thing we used was for that tank, I used like the Alhambra 5-gallon water jugs that you'll have at your house. They have attachments that are chargeable. You just push a button and it comes out with pressure. And that's what I used for that faucet. If you guys are following, you could charge it up with USB, and it's an internal pump, so it works really well. So yeah,
Very nice.
that's what we did with it. Yeah, that's what we did.
Very, very nice. Very nice. Okay, so let me pivot for 1 second and answer. So Rachel, I see your question in the chat about closed captions. The tool that I'm using, to my knowledge, does not offer closed captions. The closed captions are only available once this goes to YouTube. So I apologize that it's not available up front now, but they are available once it goes to YouTube. That is a service offered within YouTube. So I did want to let you know I see your question and address that. So thank you very much for the question. So one question, because the next pictures we're going to move into your ADU build. A question, Kisha, I saw one of your posts, and it's a question for both of you. I saw your post about van life and the experience in the Pacific Northwest with what I think you kind of talked about as like uncomfortable spaces, stares and glares. And that is obviously one of the things that we talk about here in the experience of within van life and within tiny house living, the calling out and being aware of the differences in our experiences. Do you mind talking about that a bit, Kisha?
Yes. So we were traveling through Spokane, Oregon, and we've done this before, but just, I don't know if it was the van in addition to traveling in the van that kind of added this element to where I noticed it more. But I'm in Spokane, and there are literally women glaring at us. Me and my sister and Noah, just like not very welcoming, and it was constant. It was a lot. Although we grew up in Oakland, I also grew up in Concord, which is like a valley. So and it's not very diverse. And at the time we were there, I was like middle school. It wasn't diverse at all. So I'm not uncomfortable being in a space where I'm the only Black woman. I'm kind of used to it. So that wasn't the issue. And I also have kind of through the years gotten to the point where it's like, no, I belong here just as much as you belong here, and I'm not going to let you make me feel uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
I noted it, right? And I'm not going to stop showing up. In fact, I really hope that we get to the point where more of us show up in those spaces where we get the glares, because some of it is just people aren't sure. Like they haven't had the exposure. I talked to one person who was like, I grew up somewhere where I never even saw a Black or brown person. Okay, so wow. This is what we have, is these people who haven't been exposed to us. But it was this particular trip was really difficult for me. For whatever reason, I don't know if it was just the space I was in. I think I went into the space thinking of Oregon and Washington as an extension of California, and it is not an extension of California.
Yes, yes.
It's the Pacific Northwest, but it is a very different community culture, and that happens. Like even in California, we have these different cultures between Northern and Southern California. So
right.
That was my experience. It was very difficult. My sister is also lived in Spokane, and she said it was particularly bad this time that she moved back to Spokane. And I think it has a lot to do with the political climate and people feeling comfortable kind of expressing, whether it's verbally or visually, like somehow having some facial expression. They feel comfortable doing that now. And, I'm not happy that it exists, I wish it didn't exist, but I'm also not going to stop showing up in those places. And I
absolutely
hope,
not.
We were right. And we're in a small town. We go up to Truckee a lot, and yesterday we were walking and I saw another Black woman there with her friend, and I was like, "It is good to see you, sis." And I got really excited and just like gave her a big welcome, and she did the same thing with me. That's what we have to do, and we just keep showing up until we all feel welcome, because they're beautiful spaces, and they don't. No one gets
Absolutely.
to have the rights to the most beautiful green spaces and trees and fresh air. That's it's for everyone. It's like our right.
Yeah, absolutely. Noah, I'm assuming after 21 years of marriage, did you have an awareness of this type of stuff prior to marriage, or is this something that you've come into within the marriage? Like at 21 years, I'm assuming that you probably are noticing it as well. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah. So yeah, we've been married 21 years. I grew up my whole life in East Oakland. And so I was, it's funny, I was the only white dude in the area. I grew up amongst pretty much all Black people.
Okay.
So this is normal to me, being
Okay.
married to
Mhm.
a Black woman or having kids. That my sister is half Black and white. My mom left my dad and married or got with a Black dude. So I'm very comfortable with all this, but yeah, I don't know, going to other places like Spokane, and I really noticed, like, yeah, damn, they're breaking their necks, turning and looking. It was totally different than Oakland was,
Or the Bay Area.
or the Bay Area.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm aware of it. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you both for sharing that. I always feel like, and not to put you all on the spot, but I always feel like I said in my opening, the part that is important in this conversation and in this space and the work that I feel like is my responsibility is calling out those things, those challenges, so that we are aware. Because as being part of the early tiny house movement, I recognize my journey was not like my counterparts. Like I was sharing with you all prior to going live, having to relocate my house because of racism twice. My counterparts weren't having to deal with that. They weren't interested in talking about it. But I know it's something important for us to be aware about of from a safety perspective. And all, and I feel like if you know what to expect and to be on the lookout for, you can plan properly and be prepared. And so it's important to call that out, because the movement is covered from so many other angles, and it's not covered from the angle of what do we need to know as Black people and people of color, and what do white people need to know to support us in this movement. And so I feel like that's an important conversation to continue having. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Drew. And you're right. It's important. I don't want people to get caught off guard when they show up in these spaces.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
and what happens when we don't have the conversation, if you don't expect it. And also know that it doesn't mean you shouldn't go. Like, go
Absolutely.
and be prepared, right? Be
Right.
prepared, and also look for the good. Like, I'm walking into spaces expecting to be received well.
Yes.
Expecting to be welcome, not expecting the opposite. But I note it when I don't if I'm not received well. But I'm
Right. And you're
expecting
not
for the
caught off guard because you know that there's that possibility. Absolutely. I agree with that. Agree, agree, agree. Okay, so now we're moving into the ADU space. And so Keith, well, either one of you, give us the background. So now you're in a process of the fifth ADU bill. So talk about, so you've got two single family homes, and I'm doing the high level. I think there are two ADUs at one single family home space, and then there are three at another. One is in the Bay Area, and one is in Sacramento. Correct?
Correct.
Did I get that right? Yes, Jewel.
You got it
Yes,
all right.
Jewel.
Yes.
All right. Okay, so
Yes.
talk about, so I'm not exactly sure which space this is, but talk about the ADUs. Give us kind of the background, like the sizes of the ADUs at both properties as we get ready to look at these pictures.
Okay. So at the first build, we have 150 square feet tiny house, which based on California's legislation, that would be considered a junior ADU. It's the smallest allotment, which previously, before this legislation passed, was even an option for homeowners. You could not do 150 square feet. You had to do like a larger build if your lot could accommodate even having a second property, because they had restrictions on that. So the new legislation allows us to do, this is the 150 square feet. And what we try to do, the last picture and this picture, is we try to make sure we create semi-private patio spaces for each person. So on the yellow, where you see all the yellow, the house with the yellow and blue trim, that's a patio for the main house, which is a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath. So they have their own patio. And then the tiny house where you see the wood bordering the orange and blue trim, that's their semi-private patio. Now, of course, it's not totally, but everyone has a space that's outside, so that that's one of the things we really prioritize, is just having a space that you can go outside and relax and, kind of unwind and be a part of the community too.
Yes. So you're renting out the main house, and then you've got the ADU in the back.
Right. And then we also have the attached one. So what happened with the van build was that main house, we had to move out of that main house. We thought, okay, we're going to build this van and we're going to hit the road. In order to make all of this possible, we couldn't be living in any of these places. Like, we wouldn't be able to afford to travel or anything. We had to cut back our expenses as far as we could. And housing was our biggest expense. So we had to rent them all out. And so we have that main house, the tiny house that is 150 square feet. And the next one you were about to show, that's 255 square feet. And that's an attached single car garage conversion.
That used to be that was the room out right there. That was first our boys. That was a single car garage. That was our boys' bedroom right there. But it didn't look like that when it was my kids in there. It looked like a garage.
It didn't look that bad, but it didn't look this good either.
But now that is that's the single car attached garage that's been converted to an ADU right there. Fully contained bathroom, kitchen. Yep, that's what that is right there.
Okay, so are you all paying attention? So, all right, ADUs, we talked about ADUs, accessory dwelling units. Those are structures in the back of a home. And so are you all seeing that this was previously a garage? Okay, I want you all to look at this. This was a garage.
Oh, the single car garage, yeah.
A single car garage. Sorry. No, you're fine. No, you do not have to say. That's the challenge without us being able to see each other. So you're fine. I just want people to see the possibility as you're thinking. And Crystal just called this out, and I'm going to put it in the frame again. Passive income. This is some income you have sitting right beside you right now, possibly a potential for income. Okay, so this is a different space here. Correct.
Yes. So this is correct. Yes. So we went to. That last one you show, that was the house in the Bay, and then we moved out to Sacramento 2 years ago. Yesterday was 2 years, so we moved out to Sacramento, and this right here, this picture here is another attached single car garage. So same thing, and we just converted a single car garage into a fully contained ADU. What they do call them in California are junior ADUs. But that's what this is another ADU, attached single car garage that's fully contained.
And I want to point out with the first build, this one at our main house, the house we raised our family in, the lot size isn't that big. When we moved to Sacramento, we looked for a bigger lot, but you can really do a lot. What were you saying? Is it like 4,500?
Yeah, the first house we did, where we have the main house and the other two units, it was a 5,000 square foot lot, and the one we're in now in Sacramento is 7,000, so it's bigger with alley access. So yeah, so you can do it in a small square footage lot, 5,000 square foot. We have a main home, attached garage, that's the ADU, and a tiny house in the backyard.
Okay. All
I
right.
see
Thank you.
someone
This,
asked. Oh,
yep. And I think we're probably looking at the same question about are you getting ready to address the question about the power?
yes, so we have separate panels. Although right now, because we rent just to travelers and family, we lump it into the price of the rent, so we don't separate it out yet. Eventually, we are going to be separating it out if we change the model, because we usually rent to travelers, and in that case, they're not there for longer than about 88 months, and so they can't put utilities in their name.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
So the house,
Thank.
but the house the one we're at in Sacramento, the build we're doing now, it will have separate power, separate meters, and all that stuff.
Okay. All right. And so this is a different space.
Okay, so this one is a part of the original one, the garage conversion, the very first one we did
Okay.
for my sister.
Okay.
That was at her original house. And the one that you just moved over, that one's the Sacramento location.
Right.
Okay.
So that one on
Okay.
the one on the right there, there's a tall, what would you call that cabinet next to the refrigerator, babe?
Mm-hmm.
Tall cabinet. Well, that tall
Like
cabinet, that's where like a pantry, right?
a pantry.
That's where, yep, that's where our door was to go from the main house to the garage right there. And luckily,
Oh,
I
wow.
found this pantry. Yeah, I found this pantry exactly fit right in the opening where the door was. So it worked out very well. But I was
Oh, very
interested
smart.
in. Those are
Very
all
smart. And
IKEA cabinets, all in one
IKEA
washer
for the
dryer.
win.
Yep.
IKEA for the win. Remember, I had an all-in-one washer dryer in my tiny house before I added this shed and did something different. But space saving, and I have IKEA cabinetry. IKEA for me is a beautiful option for small spaces. Wait, what's happening, Joe? I like the pantry in front of the door. Sandra, one of the guests, as we were talking about the piping that you did on top of the van, um, Sandra called out how only a plumber would come up with that, and that's beautiful. It's like you're thinking, you're thinking about how to do things and move through spaces efficiently using your skill set. So I think that's the end of those pictures. I did have Kisha, I wanted to talk about ADUs. I want to expand on this conversation. And you shared some I want to give you an opportunity to talk around the work that you're doing with ADUs and why they're important or how they're important.
Right. So I think one of the for us, we're here because we wanted to create this passive income, or we needed to create it. And we need to be in a situation that if either of our kids gets really sick, we can help them. We couldn't afford to do that before. If you can imagine our daughter lives in Long Beach now. Hopefully they'll all be okay down there. But the rents there, a one bedroom is like $2,500, and that's not going to change in the foreseeable future. And families shouldn't be forced to have their kids kind of live. We shouldn't all be forced to like live on top of each other or live in a situation that isn't comfortable, or like a kid has to stay at home because they can't live on their own, even though they're working really hard. So, our daughter has an illness and she's working very hard, but sometimes she gets sick. And in that case, we are in a position to support her. And that's what I want other families to understand, that if you can get over the fear, ADUs can be a great source of passive income. And even if it's not just, you have someone sick, an elderly person, or you want to take a vacation you always dreamed of. There are ways to, what I really advocate for first trying is an attached build. So like taking a garage that's attached to you if you have it, because are just an existing structure, because existing structures are going to be much easier to get through the permitting process and get built than a separate structure where you might need, where you're going to need it.
You probably need a structural engineer for that, so that'd be helpful.
Right, so that helps with cost and just kind of like knowledge base is less to learn. But if your city has ADU laws, find out about them. I've joined a group of parents who are looking for ways to build a tiny home community for, we have another kid that's struggling with some severe mental illness, and we're looking to build a community where they can get supportive housing, because once you solve the housing problem, there's another problem when people need services. And Jill and I had talked, we talked briefly about this, how a lot of these tiny home communities were forced to live out in rural communities. But if you have someone who has a need for constant care, you're putting us in a position where, where are we going to put them, or how can we house them if they need constant care? They also, like in our case, we could benefit from having a community around us when we're managing these illnesses too. Like it helps, there's a lot of wear on caretakers. So I just urge families to look at what options are out there for ADU bills. And like Noah said, just keep taking those little steps every day. A lot of communities across the country their legislation has changed to make it feasible for people. And if you're unsure of your site, your lot, comment one, look around you and see if anyone else is doing. Sometimes there'll be illegal structures, and that'll let you know what can be done in your area. Like there's a lot of illegal ADUs, and what the beautiful thing California's done is they've created an amnesty program as a part of the new legislation, so that homeowners can bring their housing, their illegal granny flats or in-law units up to code in a kind of way that makes, isn't so cost prohibitive as it was before.
No penalties.
No penalties. Like a lot of cities in California are doing that. There's a few that are lagging, but we're starting to see more and more of it now.
That's good. That because out of necessity, people have done this for a while. And like you said, like one of the reasons tiny houses are built on the trailer is to avoid that permitting process, because it is cost prohibitive. You cannot, the fees that are associated with that process are oftentimes almost as much as a tiny house would cost, at least before. Maybe not as much now, but the cost of the tiny house was equivalent to the cost of building on foundation. So people have to do things out of necessity, and you want to be able to support your family, and then you if you've done that, the opportunity this amnesty program is offering is to get up to code and to not, because the other side of doing that is often living in fear that something is going to happen and it's going to get called out. And so that is the benefit of that amnesty program as well, in being able to feel legal, because and that's one of the things that I am hoping for the tiny house movement, because existing in this gray area is often why I say to people right now, the movement isn't always for the faint of heart, because there's, I've had to move my house. You get on. And when I first moved in that neighborhood, there was one time where code enforcement truck pulled up and parked in front of my house, and I was like, oh hell, today is the day. And then the guy got out, and so I'm prepared. that it's getting ready to go down. And he's like, oh my God, I love tiny houses. And so then he wanted to talk about a tiny house, and he wanted to take pictures, and he's talking about what he's doing and what he's building. So he wasn't there in an official capacity. And he had taken like 5 years off of my life because it was like, it's going down today. So that was like early on. I hadn't been there very long, so I was able to stay there for 2 years before I actually got cited, or the property owner got cited, and I had to move. But it's not for the faint of heart. So an amnesty program, or eventually getting to allowing tiny houses and kind of grandfathering us in, will be something that will be beneficial. But it's housing. Everybody needs housing, like you said, and it is such a big piece of the expense, and it's getting bigger. There's, like you said, no relief in sight. So cities have to think outside of the box of ways to allow people to provide housing for family, for elderly people, for ill people, all of those things, so that we can survive. It's basic survival at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
California's doing pretty good. California did pretty good with SB 9. I don't know if you're familiar with SB 9, but it's where have you already talked about this?
No.
Yeah, it's where so any single family home now in California is allowed to have two ADUs, a attached garage, which is a junior
wow.
ADU, and you're allowed to build a tiny house in your back, and you can build an ADU in your backyard. So every single family house could have 3 units on it, as well as it gets deeper. If you want to, you could also then split your lot, and you could have 2 units on one lot and 2 units on the other lot. I might be messing it up a little bit, but if you search SB 9, you will see the options. It's pretty good.
SB 9.
Yeah. So
That's
for most
beautiful.
SB 9.
Yeah, for most people, SB 9 is going to be the lot split, and then there's some additional legislation that goes with the ADUs, but they kind of like go hand in hand, because California is really trying to get as creative as possible
With housing.
with housing, and encouraging people to build more housing. Just people like us, not necessarily developers, because once we get developers to come in and build, we can't afford those places.
Right.
Like we haven't really
Right.
solved the problem in a I'm able to rent out 150 square feet space, because I didn't spend the same amount of money, for an 800 square, or for a complex. So I can give you affordable rent. Like, that's what I can do, because I
Right.
didn't spend the same amount of money, right?
Right.
Even though I'm in the
Yeah.
city, which is the challenge, is you're in the city, right? We have to pay, but at this lower square footage, I can get away with a little bit more.
One other thing
Yeah.
to add, Jewel, about the electrical. I'm sorry if I'm getting sidetracked, but the electrical, they have a break. If anybody's experiencing where they need to divide their electrical because of multiple units or whatever, they have they're like Wi-Fi breakers, or they're called Bluetooth breakers. I forgot, but if you
Okay.
put it in your main panel. So if you have an attached ADU, or any ADU that's coming off your main electrical panel, you'll put a main breaker in there, like a 100 amp breaker in there, that is a Bluetooth breaker, and you can see it'll separate your bill. You'll see it on your phone, and it'll say what each unit's energy is
Oh,
pulling.
wow.
Yeah, so I got a quote from an electrician. It was $600 to install this breaker. I haven't done it yet, but that's what if that's the case. Yeah, so then you install this breaker, and you could then separate your 2 units and just look on your phone and say, "Hey, you use this much power," and multiply it by the electric company, and that's what you go if you want to do that route.
So,
That's
um,
beautiful. I'm sorry, Keisha.
no, I was just debating when was a good time to interject this disclaimer. You should check the legalities of anything we say first, because, like, in some parts, we can't give a person an electrical bill. That's actually illegal. We can't act as a electric company
Got it.
for us,
Okay.
so everyone else. And then the other thing I wanted to add was that you're going to think of all kinds of obstacles when you're deciding to build an ADU. Oh, I don't want this person walking by my house, or I don't, this window is there. It's good. Carry that out, like follow that through. think of the obstacle and then start thinking about what the solutions are. I'm not saying ignore, like you really do need to find what are the drawbacks and obstacles and negatives, and then just start addressing them. And
Right.
know,
In
like,
your design.
yeah, like right, there might not be the perfect situation, but can we get it to a place where we can build something in progress?
Right. Right.
That was
No, I wasn't aware of that. Thank you, Keisha, for that. And I always say to everybody, do your due diligence. Don't take our word for it. You have to, because rules change by city, county, so you have to know what is applicable to your specific situation. And so you can use this as a guideline, but then you have to know your specifics and do your due diligence. So we always talk about that. No, I wasn't aware of that technology, and that's very good to know, because that's one of the that would be a good option for someone in a situation like me in a tiny house and getting power off of a structure that's existing on the property. That would be I kind of know from living in my house for 8 years what my costs are, but for somebody starting out being in someone's property, that would be a good way to be able to delineate the cost, because you can't involve the city for power. The other thing you were just speaking about was how California is trying to address the housing concerns. And I think it's 7 cities within California that I always share here allow tiny houses on wheels as ADUs in the backyard. And so they really are thinking outside of the box, because with the ADU rules that the house has to, the normal ADU rules that the house has to be on a foundation, or it has to be owned by the main homeowner has to also own the ADU. These cities have changed that, so that's not required, and it can be on wheels. And that is just again thinking outside of the box, because we know we have a housing crisis. We know we have a crisis with the unhoused, and so helping the homeowner who has the property, it's helping them financially, and then it's providing housing, and it just makes sense. Like it's so logical. I can't understand what the drawback is, other than the cities aren't making money that they expect. Yeah. And Rosalind also said the same thing, that this needs to be enacted on a federal level. And yes, Crystal, that technology is really cool. So, let me acknowledge Sandra. So Sandra sent us a super chat. Sandra always gets the super chat party going, and I appreciate you, Sandra, so much for being here. Thank you very much. So I've dropped it in the chat. You all know, feel free to share some love with my guests, because they're dropping knowledge, and you're here on Sunday experiencing their knowledge and sharing in this conversation. So I appreciate you all sharing some love with our folks. Okay, so Sandra says, this is so inspiring. I have my tiny home. I purchased land and now trying to get the town to allow my tiny home on my 5,000 square foot lot. Sandra, reach out as you need resources and support. Thank you for sharing. And Sandra is I have several folks here who rocked with me from the beginning as I've been building this channel. So I thank you all for being here. Judith, have a great day. So one of the questions that I wanted to ask, so when we think about your tiny house, your van journey, the ADUs, this work that you're doing, what do you all, this is a you question. What do you all want this work, this journey, that as you're sharing it, what do you all want it to say about you all as people? Like the first thought is, as you're sharing this work and you're doing this work, what do you all want it to say about you all, your journey?
I guess I would just say that we have this motto. I'll start with that. We have this mantra that Noah and I kind of go back and say with each other when things get kind of tough, and say, do what is easy and life will be hard. Do what is hard and life will be easy. And that's Les Brown, a motivational speaker. Very interesting story. But I heard that, and we kind of live and die by that principle. Like, yeah, last week I did not want to be out there in 105. I took pictures and sent them to my kids, and I'm just like drenched in sweat. Just not that we don't stop and rest, because we do. I don't want to put, if you are following us on our Instagram page, we're resting. But we're working really hard when we're not resting, and that's okay. Like sometimes there has to be that delayed gratification.
Yes.
But just for me, that's what we're gonna do. What is hard, so that in the end, like we have that peace that we've cared for ourselves, and we can care for our family and be there for them more. Because that's really the ultimate goal. Is if we're busy working, crazy hours, that we can't be with our family. So that's our goal. But what about you?
I just like to take advantage of our daylight. We only have so much daylight left in our lives, and if
I
we have
like that
daylight, you
analogy.
said,
Yeah.
yeah, just I like the daylight. I don't want to be inside too much if I don't have to be. I just like, man, the daylight is so precious. And once we hit for me, once I hit my 40s, I was like, man, how much more life you have left? So just take advantage of all of your life, especially the daylight. Um, but
Absolutely.
yeah.
I like that. I like that. Thank you. What have you learned about yourselves in this journey? Or what has the journey taught you? And I think you kind of still touched, or you just touched on that a little bit, but what have you learned and what has the journey taught you?
I guess we are. I feel like what have we learned with? I think we become stronger as a couple. We become a stronger family. Um, yeah, stronger marriage. Just we're even more of a team now than we were when we were raising our kids. Maybe that's with young immaturity, and now we're more mature. But I just think with this journey, we are definitely like, yeah, definitely stronger as a couple.
And just
Mm,
capable. Like that's what I heard, is like we are capable of doing some really hard stuff and tackling some really hard issues. I had to do
Right.
something the other day that Noah and I had a conversation, and I was like, I never imagined I would be doing this. I would have to do this, but I'm doing it. And you know what? It didn't take me out. It was like I had a rough hours, and just like you think that you don't realize what you're really capable of until you're kind of faced with these mountains that you got to climb. And that's what
yeah.
this journey has taught us. We really are capable of, and how much we can manage and get through.
Yeah.
And one other
Yeah.
thing, Jewel, it's just this. I'm sorry, but just I guess when you're constantly moving, or we're just physically or mentally, even with you and your channel, um, it's healthier for you mentally. We're healthier after all this. We're healthier mentally
Mhm.
through all this. I guess you could say. I don't know how
Mhm.
to word it,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
There's
I can see
yeah, there's
that. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. So as I think about my experiences in the movement, within my tiny home, it really created a shift in my journey, like my experiences of racism. Like I share how I was so gung ho for the movement, and kind of like you, Keisha, I grew up in spaces where I didn't see a lot of myself represented, and that was okay. And the tiny house movement was definitely no different. 2012, 2013, I didn't see anybody that looked like me. It didn't deter me from wanting to be part of this movement. But then as my experiences changed, there was kind of a shift in my journey in recognizing I've got another responsibility. I have to talk about things and share my journey in a different way outside of the tiny house movement, as because initially I thought we it was a movement that was all encompassing, and we were challenging the status quo of housing. So I thought my part of my journey would be included in that. And then I recognized, no, that's really not what's happening. It is challenging the status of the size of a home. And they really just want to do the same things in just a smaller home and leave people out who are already left out of the housing conversation. So then I knew I had to do something different, and there was a responsibility. So I had to change how I represent in the movement, how it changed how I show up in the world, like ensuring that I hold space for my community. And I've seen you talking about wealth building and doing these things that you're doing that are kind of non-conventional methods, and then dealing with the systems as you navigate the healthcare systems for your children, in caring for chronically ill children. How has this journey, and maybe even the shift in your journey, because that's not necessarily how you saw this empty nesting thing happening years ago, has that created any change in your value systems, like from then to now? What has that looked like? And it might even be have something to do with where you were saying you had to do something the other day that you never thought you'd have to do. How has this work shifted your value systems, or has it?
You want me to go?
You want me to go?
No,
You got it.
The biggest thing that I've noticed for me, and even Noah too, I don't know if that's what he would say, but our priority is that we are available to our kids. We talk to our kids every day. Two of them. One, because of his challenges, we have a hard time trying to balance that. But our priority is them. They know if they call us that we're going to stop what we're doing and we're going to speak with them. Just having that clarity and not getting so wrapped up in making a living or whatever else is going on, that we don't prioritize our family and time with our family. So that's the biggest shift, and not necessarily it being about money, what we can buy them or what we can buy ourselves, and just it's really about our time and how we use it. And that's the biggest shift for me, has been how I'm going to use my time and what I'm going to prioritize, and just the value in being with each other and building together in that sense, and not necessarily financially. So that's been our biggest shift.
Yeah, she's right. Just before COVID, before all this, I wasn't talking. I don't know, my kids. We talk to our kids every day. I mean, a lot of us do. I just wasn't used to. I wasn't talking when I was working in that grind every day, and I'm still grinding right now. But I'm ready to leave that grind, believe me. But
Yeah.
But I wasn't talking to my kids, and now we're just every day we're talking to the kids. Me specifically, I'm talking to my kids every day, and that is kind of like that's what I've learned from this. Again, when I say my 40s, I was like, how much more daylight do we have? And I want to just experience everything with my children.
Absolutely.
And
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kisha.
Well, they're adults. We keep calling them kids, but they are adults.
No, we established that, but I think it doesn't matter how old they are; they're still your kids. So that's it. So I'm right there with you. We did establish that they're adult children, so nobody should be lost there. But we're still calling them kids because they're your kids. I agree with that. Like there was a shift in that, and that is kind of my intro to this conversation. That it's not just the building of a van. It's not just a building of an ADU. There's a shift that happens to you as a person in the process of this build, that it becomes so much bigger than the physical structure. That there's a shift that happens in you. There's an awareness as you're pushing through the challenges and the struggles. There's some things that start happening that open your eyes to things that you may not have been aware of. And so it's absolutely a shift, and it changes you as much as you're changing and building a building. And I think that is an important thing, because I also warn people who feel like in the beginning, they're just going to go build a tiny house. Like, you're going to be different on the other side of that. So you need to be aware of that this is going to change you. It's not just the building of a tiny house, and it's potentially going to change the people around you, because then people sometimes deal with you differently in this process. And you often don't expect that. So the people have to be ready for those shifts. So what's next? band life travels? Will that still be ongoing? What is next? What are the work with your ADUs, the work that you're doing with the organization that's building um, for including children chronically ill, mental illness challenges? What's next for you all?
Well, we hope a break after we finish this fifth ADU, which is like 1,000 square feet and bigger than anything we've ever done. So this is another kind of beast that we didn't think that we would be tackling, but we are. And we're talking about what's next almost every day. Like, we're happy where we are, but we're thinking about what's next. Maybe more living somewhere a little bit more rural and looking at projects, that incorporate tiny living and supportive housing at the same time. That's all I can say about that now.
Yeah,
Okay.
Just a quick. I need a break real quick after we're done with this one. The goal is to be done in December. Take a nice little break, and then just do. I mean, it probably sounds repetitive, but just traveling. But we don't know. We'll find. We know we have to be kind of like you said. 6 hours is too far away from your daughter. We kind of need to be centrally located to be around the kids.
Yeah,
And we'll just go from there. I'm not sure.
it'll show up for you and tell you
It'll show up, right?
what's next. Absolutely, absolutely.
I'm really
All right. Oh, so go ahead.
I'm really excited about seeing a tiny home community for severely mentally ill people, trying to support families supporting them. So I'm hoping to make some connections and kind of follow that to fruition. I don't believe that it'll happen in the next year or even 2 years, but it's down the road and in our sights that's where we're aiming for. So looking to explore some of those communities across the country that already exist.
Okay, I love that. What would be the title of your autobiography?
Mellor moves.
That was too easy, Noah.
Yeah.
He made that really easy.
What will be the
I
title
like
of our
it.
autobiography? Let's go with that, I guess.
I like it. I like it.
Yes, yes. Or we tried. I saw that from there was a dancer, and she said, "I just tried. We tried. We're gonna try."
Yeah, I like it. And that's all you can do is try. That's all you can do is try. So I like that. What's one question I didn't ask but you wish I had asked?
Um, you did an excellent job. You did everything great. I guess a question.
Thank you.
I mean, you could ask. I guess, what did your parents do? Or I don't know. Is that
Okay.
what did your parents do? Where are you from? I guess more in terms of like digging deep into who the people are.
Your background.
Yep.
Your background, I guess. But you didn't do anything wrong, though. Everything was great.
Share. And that is a question that's interesting that I left off because there was so much other information I wanted to cover. But I usually ask, like, in your background, and both of you share that you're from Oakland. Like, is there something in your background growing up in your family that you feel like led you to where you all are now in this moment? And that is a question I usually ask, kind of, Noah. So thank you.
Noah was ready to answer it.
That got us into this movement.
Something from your background.
That got us into this.
I can answer. You answer this for me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because we had different experiences growing up as children. For me, growing up in extreme poverty, like very poor. For whatever reason, I think it's because I just loved reading. I saw that happiness wasn't necessarily tied to the space I had. Like, it didn't need to be massive, or I didn't need to have a lot of money. That it really was a mindset, that my happiness was tied to my mental health and my thoughts. And that is probably the one thing I took from growing up so poor, was that it's not really the money I have. It's not, that isn't the resource that I'm most lacking. It's a mindset thing. And I'm really grateful for that experience. You know, I would have rather not grown up so poor, but I'm grateful for the experience of having given me that foundation, that know that happiness isn't tied to a dollar amount necessarily. And that led us here.
Yeah, I guess for me, I didn't grow up as poor as Kisha, I guess, but divorced family and kind of a little chaos here and there. But it just made me realize I wanted to have a family and stay married and have Thanksgiving or Christmas dinners always together. I always wanted that. I didn't have that as a child. So yeah, that's what's driven me since a young age to have a family. So,
I love that.
Yeah, you do.
I love that. I love that from both of you. Keisha, what your comment reminds me of, that statement where it says happiness is an inside job. And it sounds like that's exactly what you were saying, the realization that it wasn't going to be tied down to stuff. And I think, like, the American dream of big stuff, having a lot of stuff in the house and the money, and then people get confused with rich people who, you realize they aren't happy. They've got a lot of money, but they're not happy, because that's not where the happiness lies. And so I agree with that 100%. So thank you both for sharing that. Share with, and it's always in the video description. Once the video goes live, y'all give me some time. I gotta have some time to get it together and put up all the information, and I'll share all of their information. But tell people where they can find you online, website, if you have a website, but Instagram, I know you have. Share where people can find and follow you and support the work that you're doing.
And right now, you just follow us on Mellor Moves, at Mellor Moves on Instagram. We don't have a YouTube or anything set up. I don't know if we will, but right now that's where we're at on Instagram on Mellor Moves.
All right, that's Mellor Moves. I put it in the chat. It will be in the video description, and all of that. I think I've looked at all of the comments. Crystal, I did see your question before, how to connect with them, so I answered that. I think I've answered all of the questions in the chat. Folks have loved this conversation. I've loved the conversation. I always share that my Sundays, I kind of think about moving this out, because it hits right at the time I could be going somewhere and enjoying brunch, but that's selfish. But it always ends up being a very soulful, and to me, it requires being on Sunday. It is the Sunday conversation and the filling of the soul that I need. And so I thank you. I go into these conversations not knowing what to expect, but then they end up being the exact same part of a soulful conversation, and having an opportunity to get to know people who are in a journey and sharing their journey, and you connect with the conversation, and you see the things that people are doing that are just amazing and inspiring. And so I thank you all for doing that. And Kisha, I have to say to you, so your band JP, when you were emailing me, you started talking about JP. Those are my initials, and that's what people end up calling me, JP. So I was so confused in the beginning. I was like, how is she calling me JP? Like, how does she know to call me JP? And it's when I first saw it, and then I opened it up, and I was like, oh, the band is JP. It's like, so it was so funny to me that your band is JP, and I appreciated that JP connection. Robert, thank you for showing up. So you all didn't get to to be entertained by Robert. Sometimes he's on his best behavior when we're having conversations. Robert, I haven't met Robert, but he usually entertains us in the chat. So he was late to the party today, but he did show up. So thank you, Robert, for showing up. I'm sure you'll be back soon to entertain us. So thank you. Thank you all. Everybody is saying thank you to you all for this wonderful conversation. I am saying thank you to you all. This was a beautiful conversation, a sharing of things that are not always talked about, but necessary to be talked about. And there's some vulnerability in that, but also showing how you all are doing things to try to offset your challenges and wealth building in different ways. And so I appreciate all of that in this connection. So I'm going to close out. I'll ask you all to absolutely, Crystal, the American dream is a nightmare for many. I agree with that. So I'm going to ask you all to hold on for a second. So don't go anywhere. I am going to close out and say thank you again to everyone for showing up for me on Sundays like you do and participating in the conversation. I always appreciate you all for doing that. Again, this was a conversation on intimate spaces. One of the segments in this Creating Home Tiny House series. Next week we'll be back with the What's Your Question, where I spend time in community, chatting and answering frequently asked questions and sharing tips to help someone in or on their tiny house journey. So we'll be back next Sunday with that. I thank you all so much for being here. And as I always say, there'll be resources in the video description, the way to connect with Kisha and Noah, and then resources of that point you in directions of some of the things that we talked about. So look for that once it goes live. And then I ask you, if the video is helpful, that you'll like it, you'll share it, you'll tell your friends about it, and you will subscribe to the channel. And then turn on the notifications so that you'll know when content is live and available and when we're over here in community so you can join us. So thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your Sunday. Crystal said this is her church. This is beautiful. I feel the same way. So thank you so much for that. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day. And we will connect again next Sunday. So have a great day. Be safe.